Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome outsider and transgressive authors to come and share their work. And before I forget, good news, everyone. I know that the videos of the last few weeks haven't been going up on Misery Tourism or on YouTube, but Rudy and I are getting them. A bunch of them are up on YouTube now, and Rudy's going to upload the last couple over the weekend, and then Monday we should be dropping like a month's worth of these on the website. So let's keep your eyes open for that. Okay. Up tonight is, and this is a rarity, and I apologize, Keith. You're first up tonight. We don't have too many people signed up, and you were the first one to sign up. You were the second one to sign up, but the first one who signed up canceled out, unfortunately. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks, William. So I've prepared a short introduction to what I'm going to read tonight because I'm just not still very comfortable at extemporaneous speaking. So tonight I'm not going to read from my big story, but instead I'm going to read a short piece that I wrote back in December. It's not transgressive, it's not outsider, it's not experimental. It's pretty mainstream. A slice of life based on an encounter that I experienced. It's written sort of like a journal entry, a story that in past times would have been like what I wrote about in my private journals. And this week, when I was looking through some of my writings, I found this piece, and I remembered how good I felt from the experience. So tonight, I'd like to share this story with everyone, and I appreciate you listening. Pink Floyd at Burger King, December 15th, 2021. It was a momentary lapse of reason that connected us. His Pink Floyd shirt. Good to go?
Yeah, you're good, Keith. Sorry about that.
All right. It was a momentary lapse of reason that connected us. His Pink Floyd shirt was in remarkably good condition, matching his age. He was sitting in a booth, eating a hamburger. I was on my way out when I saw his shirt and decided to say hello. He was surprised, sort of taken aback, when he heard my greeting. And here's what I learned from a stranger while standing beside his booth on a sunny December day at Burger King, all in just a matter of a few minutes. He's 77 years old. Amazing, doesn't look a day over 55. Every few weeks, he drives 2 hours up to Jacksonville for his treatments and meds. When he comes up, he buys several weeks' worth of groceries, and he has coolers and a small refrigerator in the back of his car. Can you believe it, he says? Walmart is selling a pound of bacon for $11.48. That's ridiculous. He says that he never buys ground meats at Walmart anymore because they grind bones up with the meat. He knows that because he picked bone chips out of a spaghetti meat sauce that he cooked up. Unbelievable. He grew up in New York, in the area around the infamous Woodstock. He wanted so bad to go to that concert. Tickets were $25, which was high for those times. But his boss told him he'd be fired from his job if he went, so he couldn't risk that, so he worked. He told me the story of how the location for the festival changed 3 times before they ended up at that farm. I said, Old Yasgur's farm, and he acknowledged it. To this day, he still hates that he missed that event. Do you know how much an original ticket is worth today? He asked. And then I told him that just before coming into Burger King, I was listening to Roger Waters' Amused to Death on my playlist. And I'll just call my new acquaintance the King, since we never officially introduced ourselves. So the king tells me about seeing Roger Waters at Old Cella about 5 years ago and how Roger stole the show. And he describes the plane flying into the wall and how when the wall started falling, he was so close to it that it seemed incredibly real. And so he goes through Roger Waters' stories and Roger's lyrics and songwriting and guitar playing and how David Gilmour was really who made Pink Floyd. And we both agree. After he has recounted every Floyd album and all of his favorite songs before Dark Side. And then I have to confess that I grew up in a small town in South Georgia, and Pink Floyd was considered too radical for the young people to listen to, and that the Rolling Stones and Steppenwolf and Deep Purple weren't coffee house music in the teen center in the church basement. And the king laughs out loud. And I tell him that I got into Pink Floyd when I went to college and got Dark Side on 8-track. And I discovered Deep Purple around the same time. And he correctly said that they were a British band. And that led into a commentary on how really good the British musicians are. We both agreed. And with that segue, I mentioned my beloved British folk musician, Nick Drake. He had never heard of him. And by the time my soliloquy was done, he was all ears and going to look him up just as soon as he got back home. He was intrigued. My 30-something-year-old son says that old people are just time suckers. You can't get anything done because all they want to do is talk. Well, maybe one day my son will be my age and randomly stumble across an older person wearing a Green Day t-shirt, and he'll spend a few minutes with them. Then he may see what it's like, maybe.
Keith, this is so good. You gave me a sneak peek of this one, so I'm not going into this one blind, like usual. And I love the way that this piece is really just this wonderfully understated conversation, because there's so much like heart and truth under the surface of this conversation. There's like a little bit of like sadness and disappointment too, but so much of it is like, it's something about the way that like when you see a pretty mundane conversation presented in prose, it forces you to really focus. Like it forces you to really give your attention to it. And you presented it in a way that like, if you listen closely, you can see so much of this guy's life and so much in these like, the Walmart shit is so good because it's exactly the kind of conversation you would have, right, about Walmart with, so I spent 7 years of my life, working at a nonprofit that was a senior-focused nonprofit, and as part of my work, I would end up like I would interface with the clients a fair amount, and that is exactly the kind of story that one of the clients would tell me, and you get attuned to just how much significance there is to the price of bacon, right? It's not just like, oh, the grocery bill is a little higher. There's like so much sadness about the passage of time wrapped up in something like the price of bacon, and it's just the perfect example, I think, for this. And man, that Green Day line at the end, that slew me because that made me feel really fucking old. That's my youth there, you know. And yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling, Keith. This is a fantastic piece. It's very heartfelt. It's very understated, very quiet, but very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
I agree with everything William said, and I just want to say your voice is very comforting. So thank you again for sharing.
Thanks.
Talk about that. Just to mention, Keith's voice is very like almost like you mentioned Nick Drake in the piece, and it reminds you of like Pink Moon or one of the like real kind of soft, you know, really kind of soothing voices, even if some of the stuff is being discussed as like, like sad or whatever. It's still really soothing. Love it.
I feel like he could be doing something terrible in front of me, but if he narrated it, I'd be so like relaxed, you know? Like
It's funny that Keith's mention of Woodstock, like how he framed it, the Woodstock Festival, like it made me think like, yeah, that was the first Woodstock was a total shit show. I think people don't give it the credit, or people misrepresent it or something. And I wonder, yeah, like it almost seemed like the difference between that and like Fire Festival, or even like the second Woodstock, it was almost like the difference was like, oh, there was just better drugs. Like everyone wasn't like angry on alcohol and stuff. Like the second one, everyone was just like on LSD, and that's why it worked. Kind of interesting.
It was an interesting conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry, Keith.
Yeah, I was going to say his comments about Woodstock were, he was really, really very, very still bothered that he didn't get a chance to go to it. And I just thought as it transitioned into, and this was exactly the order that it played out. He was wearing a Pink Floyd t-shirt that said "Momentary Lapse of Reason" on it. And that was from the first line, but it played out more of like sort of exactly how it went before we got into the music bit, and it was just interesting. But I thought another thing, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Gabe, but he went to the Old Cella, which was a music festival in 2016, and
yeah, that's right. That's like right down the hill from where I am.
And it was, I had to fact check it before I put it all in, but that's exactly what he was talking about with Roger Waters. But it was a festival called Old Cella because it had Neil Young, The Who, Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan. And here he was 72, 73 years old, sitting on near the front rows of that concert. And he just was so amazed with how Roger Waters performed. And
yeah, that concert was a big deal out here. Paul McCartney played our little roadhouse up the road, Pappy and Harriet's, and it was like, holds like 100 people or something like that.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I'm not a big Paul McCartney guy, so I didn't go, but yeah, it was crazy, I guess, from whatever.
Paul McCartney.
What's that?
Nothing conspiracy.
Oh, and Rudy.
Oh, right.
And Rudy, I'm very impressed that you picked up the Nick Drake. When I mention Nick Drake, unless somebody remembers Pink Moon, it's just like you're speaking a foreign language when you talk about Nick Drake.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs by him.
Yeah, but he is just an incredible musician, and had a tremendous impact on a lot of musicians even today. But yeah, so thanks for listening, y'all. I appreciate the comment.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. So Danny's up next.
This is just another chapter from the novel in progress, Wanderer. It's called Angel Hair Dogwood. Corrine leaned over the back of her truck, blonde and slight and out of my league, with pretty green eyes above her surgical mask. I noticed the index finger on her right hand was bandaged up completely. Know any good places to get a Caesar around here? I looked at the back of her truck full of the baggage she was kind enough to let me store for the ride up. Do you want to drive first and then drink? I asked. I guess. You want to hit the road already? I mean, you better be charming, sober, or else this is going to be a short trip. What happened to your finger? I say, getting into the cab of the truck, seeing her broken index finger and noticing the few handfuls of oxy in the cup holders, and then pretending not to notice. I fell off the back of a truck, she says, and then chuckles. I was doing work for a landscaping company. Every time I look at your finger, I get this intense feeling, I say. I think I was a World War II medic in a past life. I'll let you change the dressing if we don't hate each other in another 2 hours. It was 2 hours to my old hometown where most of my camping supplies were kept. Then another 2 hours to the west coast of the island. Crane was an expert at small talk, but it took a lot out of me to not remark on the cup holders full of pills. I'm not a narc or anything, but I was worried she might nod out on the highway if we were both unlucky. I met Corrine on Tinder, and although internet dating rarely works out, if a person has that spark, it's too easy to get attached. That little spark, a lit candle in the void of me ready to try and spread to anyone nearby, is so addictive, but feelings are always the worst sexually transmitted disease. A family of brown bears lined the winding highway, entranced with our blonde hair, I guess. I want to go to there, I said, and pointed at the mountain that seemed so far away and so high above the windshield, we'd both have to grow wings to get there. Every time Crean smiled, I felt like I had won the lottery. She stopped at a bar on the side of the highway, and I got my camping shit, but checked my arbitrage bot, and it had just made $4,000. She ordered her Caesar, and I took a few minutes to figure out what local lager I wanted. I hate cops, Crean said as their drinks arrived. An RCMP wagon rolled past the intersection outside the bar. There's always a roadblock when I tried to get into Fairy Creek. Me and a friend had to talk our way through, saying we were coming to get our friend. I was afraid we'd have to hike and get lost. I think that I hate cops is honestly something only a cop would say, but I keep it inside my head for a bit. There were always people at this bar I worked at whose clothes were a bit too new to be sitting at a dive bar, trying to buy blow off one or two of the regulars or even the bartender, who were always completely fucked because it was so busy. A gram or two over the course of the shift was the best way to keep up. They would always boast loudly about their fake conflicts with the local gang task force, as though they would be alone at a bar at night if they were connected enough to draw the detention of GTF. But anyways, I wanted so badly to be clever, but that tends to backfire when I'm also unsure if a person likes me. I didn't go to that logging protest last fall because the Facebook photos were full of dudes with tight shirts and black boots. What do the black boots have to do with it? Who wears combat boots in the woods unless they're on the clock? It's a cop or it's a military psyop. Now the protests are indigenous led, all land back. They kicked out the yippies and narcs. I say cool even though it wasn't. You're chill, do you still want to drive up to Tofino? Crean asked, pushing a few strands of bleach blonde hair out of her eye. Yeah, I mean, I say, we can camp or I can get a hotel on the beach. The hotel is probably less sketchy than camping on the beach there. They always have bylaw patrols. I'm kind of a dirtbag, so I don't mind sleeping rough, she says. I slept rough most of my childhood, so I prefer a nice bed, I say, maybe a bit too quickly. I have a hard time blocking out my childhood in conversations with people, so I often blurt out whatever horrifying tidbit of trauma is closest to current conversation without even a second thought. You were homeless as a kid? Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of campsites that were free back then. I look at the ceiling to remember the name of the river we used to go to. The Chehalis River was a nice spot on the border of reserve land we went to, past Mission. I've been to Mission, Corrine says, but I've never been to Chehalis. I learned to fire a rifle there. Oh, she says, I don't like guns. They're okay. I paid the tab after the first drink, loaded up the truck with more beer from the liquor store, and then we pulled back onto the highway, barely tipsy. The hotel in Tofino was lousy with loggers at dark. We managed to beat the rain that was no doubt stuck behind a construction choke point. The concierge was a living person, I think. A woman about her age, so chipper and eager to tell us about the glow-in-the-dark starfish. Glowies, I muttered under my breath. The hotel had a late 60s decorative vibe, orange and black and yellow and brown. The room had an old-looking rotary phone that looked brand new. Stylish, Crean said, snickering to herself, opening up the bathroom door. Wow. The shower was massive and resembled the kind at a public pool. You could fit a whole 1970s porn shoot in there, I said. Crean laughed and said, I'm sure someone's already done that here. I used to pose for Gone Wild on Reddit and make money off tips. Was it an all right gig, I asked. Crean shrugs and then tosses a few cans in the fridge. Not really. Men think that they can boss you around for 20 bucks. Redditors are the worst for it. Fair enough, I say. Want to go find glow-in-the-dark starfish? Never seen the ocean so unclouded and well lit from just moonlight. Corrine and I find a comfortable piece of driftwood to sit on, and she takes off her shoes and starts digging her feet under the wet sand like a clam. It's the first time I've seen the raw Pacific, I say. That sound is amazing. What's your astrological sign? She asked, taking a sip from her canned gin and tonic. Taurus, I say. You? Aquarius, she says. Water sign. You seem more like an air sign. You think a lot before you speak. I'm tempted to drop some more childhood trauma, but the view is too good to waste on a pity party. You seem more like an earth sign. Why? She says, smiling in pale glow of another group's bonfire. I pointed at her bare feet digging into the earth unconsciously. I don't know why I do that, but it's funny you noticed it. It's like you're trying to hide, I say, to begin a long silence. Do you want to look for glow in the dark stuff now? Corrine says, putting her empty can in her bag and pulling out a full one. When we got back to the hotel, her face lit up in a strange way. The way she was smiling on top of me felt iffy because I kept thinking about how she wouldn't look me in the eye at any other time. She put my hand on her neck and asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted to meet a nice gal and settle down with an army of dogs. She said she wanted me to call her a whore. I didn't, but afterwards we lay down sweaty, staring at the light fixture and began to talk openly in the way that people can only do after they've had an orgasm. I'm in that middle place. I'm not a maiden anymore, but I'm not a crone yet. Not a mother either. So what am I? Corrine says. A person, I say, turning onto my shoulder. She said that thing so carefully, it made me think strangely. I pored over the tattoos on her body looking for clues. Persephone, a horseman tattoo. Her water bottle had a leftover crack decal on it. Why not just be a person? It doesn't work like that, she says. I'm getting old, so you can just say it. I'm a blank. Maybe think of a better word, I say. Should we have just slept in the tent? Is the resort thing making you feel like I'm a John or a Mark or whatever the nomenclature is now on TikTok? I'm an accountant, she sings and dances with her fingers. I remember I was looking for a real accountant on the dating apps and I kept getting women way out of my league matching with me, asking me what kind of services I require, I say, scratching my bare chest. Did you have that on your profile when I matched with you? She says, laughing. I fucking hope not, I say. I don't think so. Karina said, holding up her broken finger bandaged with a steel pin in the center. I'm only thinking of doing sex work. Real sex work, I mean. That dressing looks like it needs to be changed, I say. I'm going to need your help with that, she says. I have gauze and tape in my bag. Karina stands up in her bicycle shorts and walks a few paces to the chair we've piled our baggage. My mind is entering that vulnerable place where I just want to mutter, I love you and want to protect you over and over again, knowing full well that whenever I manage to protect or love myself, it's completely a fluke. She flops down on the bed and tosses the wound care kit to me. There's rubbing alcohol and some swabs and gauze and a finger condom. I need help taking the old one off, she says. It's painful. I go into my bag and take out a pocket knife and cut the bandage off her finger carefully. I feel Karine's eyes on me when I'm examining her finger and wiping the rubbing alcohol carefully over and around the wound. I see the metal pin and shudder thinking about it, but still push myself to clean the dried blood that's built up near the worst of the wound. This is the hard part, Karina says, grinning. I promise I won't cry. I fold the large piece of gauze over the finger and then tape it down. She starts wincing when it's time for the finger condom. I watch her face straining as I have to press the rim of the finger condom and roll it down over her finger. The first part is the worst part, where the top of the condom has pressure over on the finger pin. I would say that hurt me more than it hurt you, but it's probably a lie, I say. I'm on a lot of painkillers. She lets out a sad smile. Maybe it's not a lie. Maybe. We start to drift off and Karine pokes my nose. Yeah, you're like an empath or something, she says. Most men suppress that part of themselves. I'm too busy trying to suppress a bunch of other shit more worth suppressing, I sigh. Mostly memories. During the night, I have a dream that my head is in Karine's lap and she's pouring ambrosia into my mouth, psilocybin and honey mead. When I wake up, I asked her immediately, did you pour water into my mouth last night? Is there ambrosia in your water bottle? She glances away from her phone and says no sharply. Did you have a dream I turned you into a god? It didn't get that far. You just poured ambrosia into my mouth. Do you feel godlike today? Karine sets down her phone, a true sign of interest in the conversation. I need to brush my teeth, I say. There's a cool spot near here we should go to. She picks up her phone and shows me the map. 20 minutes to the bog. The bog had a long winding path with a catwalk above the endangered nature preserve. Corrine was able to identify most of the plants that wound their way around dead trees in the dried out marsh. It's been way too hot. I hope the land here survives. It makes me upset to think about it, so I try not to, Corrine says before pointing at a small white flowered plant. Do you remember the name of that one? I looked at her blonde hair, wispy and draped over her shoulders. Angel hair dogwood. That's thimbleberry. It's the easiest one, she says. Why angel hair dogwood? That's not even close. It has similar petals to dogwood, and I associate it with you now. That's sweet, she says before turning back onto the path. Wait, I spotted a dead tree, bare of leaves and crooked like each arm could be made into a shillelagh. It looks like this tree is barely hanging on. It reminds me of my family tree. That's sad, she says. This place is bumming me out. I look out the window and see the sun beginning to dive below the ocean. Beach time, I say. Last night here, we should make it a good one. Let me close my eyes for a second, Corrine says. The pain is catching up with me. Sure. Corrine falls asleep in the bed and I look out the window, watching the sunset tick away like there's an egg timer in my head. The sky is bright orange and pink before Corrine's feet begin to stir. She inhales sharply and her eyes open. I had a weird dream, she says, her voice still breathy before she walks to the mini fridge and takes out a can. We find a place on the beach to watch the end of the sunset, and for a half second, Corrine leans into me. We probably won't see each other after this. Oh, I say, I guess that makes sense. I don't really date seriously anymore, and I don't really have a steady home. I want to work on a farm, but the owners can be a little overbearing. I look down the beach to the giant mansion sitting right on the water. Did you know smart homes are insecure? Like you could hack the Wi-Fi and break in? Didn't your profile say you were like a tech bro or something? Not really, I say. I tell the cops I'm doing research for a book, which is strictly a true statement. I thought you were kind of boring, she says, the first night until, it's not something you should talk about really, hacker shit. It's cool, she says. The tech bros I've met just talk about apps you're making or other shit. I can't remember because it's boring. Maybe it's a story for another time, I say. I'm not a first impression guy. I tend to grow on people. Like a fungus, Corrine says, smiling. I do a spit take with my beer and then clink my can against hers. Good one. Corrine wraps herself in the plaid shirt and shifts her weight to put her body up against mine. I swing my leg over the large driftwood log so she can cuddle closer. Angel hair dogwood, I say into my beer. Corrine yawns, thimbleberry, softly. That's it.
This is great, Dan. I know I've said this about your writing a million times, but every time you read, I'm always in awe of the way that you write dialogue, especially the way you write dating dialogue, because you capture so much of the of both the awkwardness and the tenderness of that, and a lot of people you write very bluntly, and a lot of people who write bluntly also write crassly, but there's a shocking amount of tenderness in your very blunt, direct writing. It's not at all like the people who try to mimic Bukowski or whatever. I think there's this conflation in the minds of a lot of writers that if they're going to write very directly and very bluntly, they need to write super cynically as well. And your writing is refreshingly free of that. And instead you get all of the weird hidden awkwardness and fear. And I feel I have to sit there a couple I think I'm getting
Gangsta.
off the stage like it's the fucking Oscars or something. I was talking for too long. Anyway, Dan, that was a great piece.
Thank you. I will say that I've noticed the Bukowski stuff, people write, like you said, crassly without capturing any of the awkwardness. And if you're gonna write about sex bluntly or dating bluntly, you also have to capture all the little moments that you might want to forget, like tripping over your own shoelaces and or saying or accidentally spitting on them while you're talking because you have too much moisture in your mouth, that kind of shit.
Right,
And that's the stuff that makes it more human, right?
Yeah, that's the shit that you remember too. Like when you're thinking back fondly on like romance. Like that's the shit that sticks in your memory, right? Like those moments of interpersonal awkwardness that gain power over time, you know? And it's also the shit that you remember clearly, right? Like the things you felt important about or whatever. So no, it is a fantastic piece, man. Thank you so much. Up next is it's Brandon.
All right.
Just a second, I'll get the doc in the chat here.
Link this one, B-Boy,
Yeah,
on
by all
Twitter.
means.
Okay.
That's up to you.
Okay.
Just fair warning, Brandon, we're having a little bit of a troll issue.
Oh yeah.
Oh, also for the chat, if you have a friend in the waiting room right now, just let me know. Send me a message or put it in the chat because I'm not letting anyone else in. Because the last 3 people I've let in were just fucking trolls. So, all right. Sorry, Brandon. It's all yours.
Oh no, it's all good. So this is unusual for me. I'm doing a little poetry tonight. Like I said on my Twitter post, spent last night in the emergency room. Obviously, I'm here, so I'm fine. But yeah, these were all kind of inspired by some of the shit going on right now. I'll just get right into it. Black bile. Paranoid, I sit and do my level best, not to focus on the growing ache that consumes everything that I've consumed. Pain is the warning sign, but anxiety is the mind killer. Opportunities lost and paths not taken out of fear of what might happen. The leap is more concerning than the fall. Shields and spears you've used for years to keep yourself moving forward, cast aside and crippling, dependent on accelerants just to keep moving forward, but take them all away and you just stop. Phlegm. Give it all up, throw it all away, pick it up again. Coping mechanisms won't help you now. You don't want this, you don't need that, you don't let it go that easy. 2 shots to the neck make the pressure release, but you've got to use caution now. You've denied yourself by sitting still, but stillness is the only comfort. You want to move, you want to live, but you just don't have the heart. Blood. So hard to digest, sow the seeds that seem to be the only thing that doesn't burn. You want to light that shit up, you want to drink that shit down. You move too fast, now everything rises, and that shit gets to your head and reminds you that you aren't getting any younger. Consume, ignite, imbibe, stoke the fire and let it ride, sanguinary, satisfied. And if that goes too far, would that lead to a cardiac arrest? Yellow bile. The heart can only take so much shit. Accelerator to the floor because you gave it the gas. So let's do a speed run and see who passes first. Move aside and let the man go through, but that's just a choleric soul, coughing. Bile fascination on what's gone wrong, creating death spiral fixations, terrified by the concept of going out like the king upon his throne. But that's a different humor. The endless cycle knows that one day it will end, but there is no telling how.
I dig these, Brandon. I really like the light cadence and rhythm of these, which I think captures like the experience of having an anxiety attack and misinterpreting it as a health crisis, right?
Oh yeah.
Because like you get these really claustrophobic verses where like they're like it's all crammed in together, like heart palpitations, like boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. And then it comes to an end and there's those one good fucking final lines, which is terrifying, which is more terrifying than all the claustrophobic pent up like acoustic thoughts throughout. Like the thing
Exactly.
the thing that's fucking more terrifying than having your heart suddenly speed up would be to have it stop, right? And those final one word lines are perfect. Like they just, I don't want to say kill because that was inappropriate under the circumstances. But no, this is these great panic attack poetry, B-boy. I dig it.
Awesome. Thank you.
I really, really loved when you said blood, so hard to digest. That's what it was, right? like just the way you said it was perfect. And also, there's this phrase in Swedish that translates to the heart can only accommodate one bitch, and it kind of reminded me of something you said as well.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Awesome.
that's all. That was all. That was amazing. I mean, I have a lot of panic attacks. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's really
it's been a hell of a week.
yeah. I'm gonna shut up now so I don't talk about astrology.
That's what the after party is for. So, thank you, Brandon. It was awesome. And Gabe is up next.
Oh, already. I wrote a piece on the forthcoming James Newlick book, Lazy Eyes, and this is going to be in probably a heavily edited version of this is going to be at LA Review of Books in June, but I just finished it today. I just wanted to hear how it sounds. A world horrific and wondrous on James Newlick's Lazy Eyes. I heard rumors from others who read advanced printouts of Newlick's new manuscript that it was undoubtedly a horror collection, an unexpected move for the refined literary dark horse. When prodded, Newlick claimed he had no intention of writing horror, but that perhaps the Lagosian dread of COVID seeped into his latest work. Immunocompromised, living with HIV, Newlick is at higher risk, so he never left the house. This existential suffocation, trapped in your body or dissociating, possessing another one entirely, is churning like a storm through his latest Lazy Eyes, Expat Press. The more I recall passages like this one, quote, think about being human for a moment. Having a body is horrifying, a soft bag of meat easily split open, revealing the horror we all wish to escape, unquote. The more I think the horror theorist knows something he doesn't, even though I know the real truth here, Newlick knows even more than they might. Because Lazy Eyes is horror that could only be written by an author who paid close enough attention to the inherent terrors of adolescence. And Newlick writes like someone who's been high risk since the first day he cried, born under a bad sign but wide-eyed, dangerously curious once the tears dry. Newlick treads similar teenage nostalgia in his sublime 2015 novel, Valencia, where the suicidal narrator's life is saved by simple recall of a life flashing before his eyes, precious memories of elemental innocence. But in Lazy Eyes, these memories are pure danger, remembering where it all goes wrong. Quote, if the collection has any theme at all, perhaps it's a consideration of how animals and children are often abused at the hands of adults with or without intent, said James. It sounds horrific, but Newlick, a searcher and practitioner of the perfect sentence, uses language so beautiful that even at its most traumatic, there's a detached wonder, a reverence. Perhaps his style is best summarized in the book's Tech Nightmare Spiders. Quote, when you stop caring about what others think of you is when weird and creative and dangerous things start happening, unquote. A gay Mexican-American, Newlick grew up in the wide space of the scorching Arizona desert and now sequesters himself in overcast Seattle. So he's accustomed to standing in two circles, a conduit between worlds. This occult element is convincing because Newlick can possess other POVs like no one else. In the case of The Beautiful Sister, he highlights sibling rivalry through the eyes of a teenage girl, Melanie. When she meets Fernando, she makes no secret for her hatred of her older sister, Melissa, the beautiful one. I want her dead, she texts him. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, let me talk to my Aunt Lena, he says. Here he ushers us into the world of witchcraft via Santeria, culminating in Tia sharing a death spell. Newlick researched various rare black magic books to create a palpable authenticity. However, the story is less about the dark arts and more about jealousy's broad strokes, youth's failure to envision consequence, though Newlick's rhythmic prose often reads like a spell, truth be told. In The Mannequin, Newlick explores profound devotion in the inanimate. When the attraction is this strong, especially in this age of identity politics, who's to say it's not legitimate? Quote, holding someone's hand in your hand until their hand disappears, until you become one, their body and your body indeterminate. This is the definition of love, is it not? When we forget someone is there, when they become us, moving from the other to the us, unquote. For those of us who follow James closely on social media, this piece serves as an origin story for Nico, the store window dummy he calls his son, through which he often communicates to his followers. Quote, some nights Nico appears in our bedroom, loitering by my nightstand, on my side of the bed, and the unexpected shadow temporarily frightens me. I pick him up and move him back into the living room, and he asks why I am moving him. He doesn't like being alone. I don't answer him because I don't know the answer. I don't want him frightening my lover. We all have our secrets. It's how couples stay together so long, unquote. Dummies be damned, Nulick gives further voice to the voiceless in Claws, a feline narrated confessional, an IRL to a world looking down on our sleek sexualities. It's a shape-shifting reclamation of our feral beings, our prerogative to allow nefarious spirits to inhabit our body. Quote, some might call me a manifestation, others an idea, but the simple truth of it is, I am whatever I need to be, unquote. In Dark Web, originally published in Expat 4, a modern couple's domestic dystopia doesn't so much rear its head as much as it continues burying its head in the sand, melted into the glass teat of our screens, quote, and sand rules over lives in so many ways as to be unnoticeable. Perhaps the most pervasive of all, the silica contained in printed circuit board, sandwich of copper and fiberglass that brings the outside worlds into our bodies via the interface of screen and retina. 4'9" and bunk beds are perhaps the tenderest bits, appearing consecutively. They're two fluid recalls of bemused yet driven erotic youth, where all elements, predatory or explorative, ooze into the rude awakening of sour milk. The bewilderment of teenage initiation sets a boy up for failure when he's unsure what makes a man. Visions of flickering shadows from unfit adults, a coven around a fire, their laughter conspiratorial, the stillborn thought, quote, why am I the only kid on this camping trip, unquote. While it's nothing nefarious beyond the mystifying firsts, there's a sinister point to these synapses forming. With the stench of fish gore on his fingertips, he reflects, quote, it's as if my body has been marked for death. It bothers me that I am responsible for the suffering of another being. Like the summer afternoon, age 10, when I shot a white pigeon from a palm tree with my Daisy rifle. I ran to it, horrified, and it was as if I had died there too, on the lawn. It's a simple equation, feeling gentle, therefore wanting to be treated gently, that makes one wish they could bypass puberty's roughhouse posturing. Yet the hormones remain, and when a crush is tempered on another boy, their osmosis is teased to a boiling point, combustible by lures of Jack Daniels and Copenhagen. Is it Copenhagen or Copenhagen? Anyway, trickle down from parents numbing themselves into oblivion. It's here that Nulick embeds a chilling stanza right out of a sing-song 70s horror film. Quote, mirror, mirror, my quicksilver double. Is there anything more beautiful than children in trouble? The unmistakable style, known to many as Nulickian, slowly unravels and unveils, avoiding insult to our intelligence where lesser writers are compelled to belabor to the lowest common denominator. His sentences trickle, rush, then flash flood, as if he's protecting us until we're surrounded by the impassable. Then it's up to us to find our way back to complacency. With little to no attributions to his voices, we are left to our own creativity as readers, lulling us to find universal threads and disparate sides. In Strange Captive, he teases our sensibilities. We assume it's a child who's been kidnapped until they escape to kids at an ice cream truck. Quote, the gummy heat off the asphalt tonguing my body as I trot into the street on all fours, my paws burning, barking at the children as I sense the door of the house opening, unquote. On one hand, it's a sweet reminder of the profound bond between our children and man's best friend. On the other, a frightening admittance we might neglect our children like pets, some which grow up to be animals, finally disciplined by incarceration. In The Black Doberman, the dog is more deliberate, observing the habits of its owners until it disappears, its consciousness compromised, perhaps commandeered by the woman. Quote, I know safety is only an illusion, for the world has always been dangerous, especially for women, children, and animals. Men's hearts are filled with rage and murder, unquote. To be born into the right body but the wrong time, a raw subject explored in Doe, the book's most devastating and human offering. Nulick does so with a blunt sensitivity that transcends life or choice, instead inviting us to, quote, stand at the altar inside the cathedral of my skull, unquote. The effect here is reminiscent of the hyper-observant inner dialogues from the film Wings of Desire, implying an in-between spiritual purgatory inhabited by angels too pure for our world. Quote, we can never be alive again, not like them, unquote. Matriarchy also assumes unlikely form, like in the aforementioned Spiders, where technology gives birth to the Limerator, a hybrid of our real-life robot dogs, only arachnid. Perhaps this Black Mirror-esque tale acts as its own prescient warning, the perfect bookend to the one provided in The Beautiful Sister, where we began. The invocation used, quote, the invocation used in the story is for entertainment purposes only. Neither the author, editor, or publisher shall be held liable for the use or misuse of any information in this story. Liabilities also be damned. Nulick has come a long way since he studied under William T. Vollman, when the college he was attending kicked him out for throwing his typewriter through his 14th floor window. So it's fitting that Expat Press calls him their long distance runner. And with Lazy Eyes, his most horrific yet somehow most accessible book to date, Nulick is offering us his hand to see how hard we can sweat along with him. Try to keep up, will you?
I want to read this.
It's such a fun book to riff on. Like it took me a long time to write that, but it was so much fun to write that.
Yeah, no, you do a great job. You do a great job of breaking it down and like tantalizing us without like giving the game away, right? Like I feel I've wanted to read Nulick shit for a while. I've read like the first 3 or 4 stories in Haunted Girlfriend, and they blew me away. And Adam sent me his copy of Valencia just before I went down here, and I foolishly didn't bring it to Virginia with me. So it's sitting in my bedroom in my parents' house.
You would love Valencia, I think. But yeah, I think
Yes.
this one is actually kind of a great one to start with. It's yeah, I don't know. I was surprised, like I said, I was surprised how terrifying and really gnarly it is. But I think it's really accessible at the same time. It's a really hard thing to pull off.
I feel like you know, the darkest places like of your mind, like James Nulick kind of just like lives there and he writes from there, and you totally just,
Yeah, for sure.
as someone who loves James Nulick as much as I do, like that was perfect. Thank you
Thank you. Thanks for
on
listening.
behalf of him. I don't know. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, dude, no, I really, it's a riveting review. It's really good. As I said at the top, like it is exactly what a review needs to do, which is it makes me want to read the fucking book, but I don't feel like the book has been spoiled for me. So that's
Good.
perfect.
Yeah, the way you jumped through it definitely sold me on the personal horror aspects of it. Like definitely, like this sounds like something to be right up my alley. I have Haunted Girlfriend, but I haven't really gone through it. So I read so slow and I read at such a weird and awkward, it fucking takes me a while to get into headspace, but this sounds like something I'd be into. And this review definitely sells it, I think.
Yeah, it's annoying. The book doesn't do any, like nothing out of the ordinary really happens in the book, but it's just the perspective. The perspective is just horrific, I guess.
Gabe, if you talk to James, tell him he has to come and read here. Adam's been corresponding with him by email for a few months now, and he's been trying to get him to come to Misery Loves Company. And
He's so shy. He's
I can just text him right
insanely shy.
now.
Yeah. What's that?
I can text him right now.
I did at him on the on the Twitter thing, so maybe he'll show up.
No, he sent me, I made some depressed tweets a week or 2 ago, and he sent me like the sweetest email. He's just the kindest email. And he did this once before when after I published that cancel culture piece, he sent me an email. It was So he's a real, from my like limited interactions with him, he seems like the sweetest guy, but I get what so he's like, probably, you said he's just kind of too shy to come and share his work, or
Yeah, hey, I know he doesn't really like to do readings, but yeah, maybe we could
get that.
convince him one of these days.
But no, it was fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to it, to the book. Hopefully I can get my hands on a copy here. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
And Rudy's up next. And after Rudy, it's going to be all open mic. So if you have a piece that you'd like to read after Rudy's done, just say something in the chat. And yeah, you can go next after that. Okay, Rudy, it's all yours.
Alrighty. Yeah. So oops. Okay, I got my mic on. Okay, so this is a couple pieces I'd call computer assisted writing, I guess. I made it with this little generator, so I'll just start into this. Tweeting it out here. Okay, so all these stories were written under horrific constraints that involved allowing my characters to quote unquote take control of the plain Hulk Hogan and speak for themselves, influencing, read, commanding how I write. And I did this despite the fact that I'm a bad writer who has trouble writing coherently even without constraints, because I'm a sick fuck obsessed with supervillains, tulpas, and other shit. And this is a link to the program right here. So there have been a lot of versions of this program, and I've tried many different ways of using it as a creative tool. So I explored the hyper-personal stuff in Personal Villainy, which is a series of poems I did. But with these, I just want to have some fun and fuck around with the characters. And so if you scroll down, like some of these have their stories, and they have explanatory comments attached. And I'll do the comments. You can click on them as you read or whatever, but I'm going to go through and explain them a little bit after I read, and I might at the end do a screen share. I'll let you know before I do it, but I might do a screen share just to show how the program works. So this first one is called Carnal. Miss Snyder won't eat. Miss Snyder won't take Effexor. Miss Snyder takes Wellbutrin, 300 milligram strength. Miss Snyder says, most kikes cha-ching off my lost marbles. Snyder wasn't always anti-Semitic. She wasn't always an asshole. She was a daughter, was a friend of Dorothy. Dorothy slit her wrist. Warm was her afternoon bath and warmer her hereafter. Dorothy wished her bestie, Tamsin Snyder, could experience her hell. Tamsin experiences hell whenever liberal cocksuckers destroy children. Cultural murder-suicide. Life is everything to Tamsin. Life evades Tamsin. Lifesaver is God's gift to women, whomst deserve warm baths without bubbles. The contraceptive didn't work. Lifesaver is a sword filled with the Holy Spirit, meaning the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. So for this one, I'll go through some of the comments. Well, basically, this program, it just looks like a text editor, and inside of it, and you can click on it if you want and open it up, but I wouldn't recommend it on your netbook, William. But so basically, it's a text editor, and these little glyphs, these little icons with the character's picture or whatever comes up whenever you type certain letters. Every letter is mapped to a character from my superhero setting, world, whatever you want to call it. I've written various things in it. So this character has a glyph in there, and so I'll just go through and read essentially this is my process as I use the program to help it inspire me to write this piece, this carnal. So the first footnote, Snyder. So S is Sabbath, and Sabbath's rule asks the writer to write about the chip on their shoulder. And so this was already going to be a lifesaver piece, lifesaver being the mentally ill, quote unquote, sword of the pro-life movement, who basically has a big energy weapon on her arm that gets bigger when there's more abortions. so she thinks. So it was already going to be a mental illness piece. So I just doubled down on that, and that's how I satisfied that role. So T is for Turf Builder, and Turf Builder is a rad fem with an agenda to remove all the T and replace it with E. So there were too many of the letter T at this point. What she wants is she wants to balance it so that there's more E, more of the letter E than the letter T, which is kind of really a pain in the ass to write around. But these are the rules I made for myself. So there were too many letter T at this point, which directly influenced my choosing of the word effexor. I was going to use a different antidepressant, but that's the one I wound up going for because I needed ease. So yeah. This word. So the character Krakow, who is actually the Police Academy sound guy version of a dude from the Auschwitz Prisoners Orchestra. That's the way I describe him. What he does is he asks the writer to transform verbs into phonetic sounds. So in this sentence, I turn the verb benefit, as in benefit monetarily, into chang, which is the money sound. And I had written a little note for Josh Sherman to apologize for using that word, but apparently Josh isn't here tonight, so I can't read it. Rip. Friend of Dorothy, that F is first responder, and what he does is he pops up basically a Google pop-up, makes it so that you have to type into Google, and you type the word and the next. So I typed friend of, and I let the Google thing do its magic, and it returned friend of Dorothy. That was one of the Google autocomplete suggestions. So in I guess in UK slang that means gay. I was related to that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know this. So I didn't know this going into it, but it kind of inspired the idea of Lifesaver May being a closeted lesbian. Dorothy. So D is for degenocide. Genocide is a degen who takes basically things that people say literally and transforms them into a wish. So like if you say, I wish my boss was dead. Yeah, so your boss is dead. So what he does in this program is he asks the writer to take the nastiest thing they wished for all day, integrate it into the sentence. So yeah, I mean, suicide, death, that's on my mind pretty much all day. So that's what I did. That's what I used here. This section, the hereafter. Oh, yep. Dorothy went to hell for being a fornicator. Rip. Yeah, that's that. Liberal. So L, that's Lifesaver. That's the kind of titler character of this. The pro-life character. So words that start with L ask the writer to justify all uses of backspace, also known as abortions, with a parenthetical clause at the end of the sentence. So I hadn't erased anything by this point. So this L, I didn't have to justify anything. However, when you get down here, by this point, I'd erased probably 20 or 30 times. So 20 or 30 characters erased. And because this sentence really, really killed me. And so I was worried about Mousetrap, who is another character who comes up. And basically when Mousetrap comes up, whenever you type M, there's a chance for Mousetrap to come up. And if that character, if she shows up, you have to delete the entire thing and start all over again. So I didn't want that to happen. So I was actively avoiding M's in this sentence. And that was kind of weird, twisting me around. So that's why I had a lot of erasures there. So this one, filled, again, first responder, the rule asks you to type, an F word and then type the next word. So filled with is what I put into Google, and filled with the Holy Spirit, meaning this came up. This is actually what came up on Google's as one of Google's autocomplete suggestions. And that was actually perfect for me because I wanted to end the thing on a Bible verse. So that's that. So with that, I'll go on to the second piece here. It's called Fantasy Travel Narrative number 1. And this is well, you'll see. Her mood was somber, unlike her trademark sombrero that had traveled to umpteen war zones with her, as she altruistically offered a boost to an elderly man climbing a highway embankment. Press is what her badge said. Cell service was bad. The satellite launched by Mousetrap Industries had experienced technical issues after leaving Earth's atmosphere. Mousetrap herself was unavailable to comment. Know what real politically sucks about this war, Miss Cromwell? Said the elderly gentleman, who was Sean Penn. The optics, opined the woman in the sombrero as she fiddled with crossword puzzle apps in her World Peace Hyper DSLR camera. Medical healthcare concept. Wrong. It's the superpowers. Sean hoisted his travel tote over an abandoned stroller emblazoned with the autism puzzle piece. Superpowers, of course. Hailing from New York's journalistic elite, Joel Cromwell felt an atavistic longing for the times when the United States alone wielded coveted superpower status. Under its tenure, amazing photographic triumphs like the New York Times, like the Times Square sailor nurse had blossomed. And hey, there may have been certain claims about that picture, but the way it inspired a national spirit, an ethos, an eidolon bigger than Dr. Manhattan's penis, excuses everything else. And law number one of the media is I want to come, motherfucker. The death of print outlets was a tragedy. 100% agree, Mr. Penn. Jill was thumbing between Crosswordly and Associated Press articles about Putin's latest military maneuvering, caught between two extremes. A push from the parking lot for Russian or quasi-Russian armor called Crimea was stalled as elements from the aggressing column engaged Baba Yaga's chicken house in a battle that conjured Michael Bay, the MCU, and the souls of the righteous Ukrainian dead. It was then that Jill understood what the old man was saying. Aside from a certain point of view, a reticulated drone's eye, the exploits of supers weren't really being covered by the media. We're otherwise doing a heroic job. Editor's note. This paragraph reads like something that would be tagged with contains excessive in-universe information. Explain supers. The reader may not know what that word means if they don't read genre fiction. Provide context for Baba Yaga's mythological roots. I think we should move more quickly, Sean said, almost out of breath. Yes, sir, Jill said, trying to smile for the people of Ukraine and all the invisible cameras. It's a long way to Poland. Fighting with the editor in your head is never fun. And then we have these things here. So I use the letter. I started a word with Y. So there's this character called Yoke. Another character kind of with a chip on their shoulder. And so as per Yoke's rule, for every good comment that I have on this piece, that is every time someone compliments me on this piece, I have to remove one word from the story. So knowing the good-natured, encouraging spirit of MLC, I have padded the end of this piece with solicited words from Unboxer, who is another character. He starts with U. So that character forces you to solicit random words and put them somewhere in your piece. So kind of cheating there, I put these words that I solicited at the end of the piece. I'll just read those off right now. Joint, wheelbarrow, frame, honey, lay-by, gas, and Russia. And the next one, the last one, is called gerrymandering. On Earth 357 and all other Earths bearing the European scourge, ley lines encircled barrows filled with white bleachy bones. Describing this is delicate, like a doll created from porcelain. Beautiful summer in the European village, green field view on the background of country houses. When the dragon split in half, there were great amounts of bloodshed, and hey, contractions ruinate the exotification. I'm a simple vector letter and shop bag combination logo design concept, he said, lying. I'm tired, medicated. At night, he works ritualisms for the people. Fantasia, explains the Censor Bureau, but with no gay sex. Wand, then abscond. He is before cartographers, dressed in the latest Han Fu. My God, I'm exhausted. He is before generals, romancers, come Romanizers with obsidian ambitions, and made myself the sheriff. He is after Jing Fei. Come, 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 on her butt, legs. He told her basically, you are the epic in epicanthal folds, lol. It's 1:45 a.m. rip. His service is to redraft arcane lines on a map. He is no Thomas Hofeller in any sense, but he is the only one who can work in this capacity. It's 2 a.m. Kill me. Kablooey. With his masterful calligraphy, tiger strokes of white replacement with a Bic, Earth energies are reharmonized. The neat to irreplaceable Great Master pipeline is a radiation, or tradition, or both. Capitalism, at all its westerly capitals, shrinks to a husk. Men become mice become men. Would transition have saved her in this house of flying daggers? He is a god, but unhappy. Blue. How you gonna fuck a nigger? Recall timestamp. He is constantly informed about in real life truths. Tireless struggle. I faint. And that's it. I'm probably not going to share the program. I'll probably just leave it at that.
Okay, so I have a question for you. The compliments that make you delete words in that
Mhm.
one story, is that spoken compliments or
Any-
compliments? with
Any, I
that-
guess.
God damn it. Okay.
And I'm actually going to do it. I'm actually going to delete.
Oh shit! I just twisted my leg. I'm going to try to preserve as much of that story as possible. So I'm going to
Don't-
ask.
Don't. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but don't, because I'm gonna actually do it. I'm actually gonna delete however many I get. So if you want to spam it, so I delete the whole thing.
You're getting pushed pretty hard in the chat right now, my man.
It's okay. Fuck yeah. Does anybody have a rough count right now? Because I'm gonna actually go through and delete it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going through the chat right now. Wait.
So I think my 7 will give me some padding here. So, but we'll see, I guess.
Is each individual line count, or is it each comment from each person? Because some people.
We'll say
like-
each comment from each person, whatever.
What if
That
we
seems fine.
quote from the text?
That's fine. That counts.
That count? Okay, so
Sure.
we're at 1 for Gabe, 1, and now 2 with Jesse. Eris is 3 and 4. Eris is, oh my God, that's one line. Yes, is the next one, so we're at 4.
Damn it. That's not even coherent. That doesn't count. No.
Just a rough estimate. Roughly, would you say like
Okay, we're
more
at
than 7?
5 with Dan,
Mhm.
6 with Evan, Dan's back 7, 8 with Carter.
Okay.
Eris is laughing, that's 9.
So my shield's gone here.
10 with Carter again.
Roger that.
11 with Daniel agreeing with Carter. 12 with Gabe. 13 with me quoting a big chunk of the text. 14, well, actually, 14 with Gabe. 15 with Garth. 16 for me again.
16. Okay, we're
Carter
going
is
there.
Carter has realized what's going on. And so we're 17 now with Carter. Garth has also figured out what Stug odds for at 18. Carter asks a question, so that doesn't count. Garth has asked questions, that doesn't count.
And no, a comment, a negative doesn't cancel it out. Just to answer Carter's question. But
Okay, we're still at 18.
Okay.
Oh no, Jesse really wants to screw you. 19.
Yeah.
Okay. We're at 19. No, we're still at 19.
Okay.
I'm not
that's
sure.
gone.
I'm not the last 2 bits from. Well, I think we're just at 19 because the
Yeah.
last is from Eris. I'm not sure what.
That's irrelevant to. It was just one
Sure.
technique.
We're gonna take 19 words out of the story. Ready?
Sure. Okay. Yep. I just killed 19 words. So that included my my
Can I
parenthetical.
suggest a phrase? Johnny from The Outsiders.
Well, I mean, I did what I was obligated to do. So I deleted the words. That's probably all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Bless
Okay.
you.
So, Woody, I've got a question though.
Mhm.
And I think I've asked this before, but I think the program has evolved since then. How do you know which words trigger the supervillain? So just to be clear,
Mhm.
what it is the first letter in different words will trigger rules that you have to follow
Yep.
as the writing moves along. And those rules are each tied to character, basically, like an evil
Yeah,
villain.
An evil villain.
Please,
Yeah, they're all
please say
villains.
something completely illogical, like you have synesthesia or something, and just tell me when you're done, because I just want it to be magical.
Something.
So
I-
how do you determine which words do or don't trigger the characters?
So every word triggers a glyph. Every
Mhm.
word triggers, but some glyphs only trigger once, or can only trigger once in each time
Got
I hit enter, basically, or each time there's a button it says enter on it, and
Mhm.
each time I hit that, it'll reset all the glyphs.
Gotcha. So some letters are limited to once per story then. And
Yes,
some,
yep.
some rules only take effect once. Okay, that makes
Yep.
sense. Makes sense.
Like the yoke one, that one where I had to delete shit, that's only once per story. So I mean, I wouldn't have to delete double the whatever,
Right,
it's it only
right.
can only trigger once. So
Jesus, though, that is still obscenely like structured and obscenely restrictive, though. Each
It
fucking
is.
word, huh?
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
and there's some that lets you ignore glyphs, like the letter O will let you like ignore a certain number of glyphs if you what O does is you can ignore like X number if you take into account previous criticisms of your work and try to write the story based on that, or write that particular section of the story based on those criticisms, which is kind of fun because I was saying like, oh, a lot of people say like my work is inaccessible, which it is. It's very true. So I try to write it more accessibly, like that scene in the one with the Michael Bay shit.
Yeah.
I tried to make it as accessible as possible. There's an O word in there, and that O word let me ignore a shit ton of really nasty ones. So I tried to write around that. I tried to write it just like whatever Michael Bay or like real shit. But I don't know if it was successful, but it doesn't matter because as long as I try to do it, I count it.
Right,
So.
right.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I cannot imagine trying to write under constraints that are that rigid. I should give this a try sometimes, because sometimes like constrained writing can actually, like, if you're in a slump, which I am right now with my writing, I haven't written in like a fucking month. Sometimes like these kind of experiments, these sort of constrained writing experiments can actually like give you an impetus to write, so you're not beating your fucking head against the wall so bad, you know?
Yeah, I found with me it does help me because my impetus with a lot of superhero shit is to try to do it like perfectly or like literally when it should just be more like silly shit, I feel, and this helps it make it silly basically.
Right. Well, that's cool, Rudy. So we've got two people. I don't think I missed anyone. We've got two people in the open mic, Tyler and then Eris. If you want to get in the open mic after Eris, just put something in the chat. Okay, Tyler, it's all yours.
All right then. Well, this is an essay that was of mine that was published today on Grumpire, which is a film site that I contribute to a lot. And I thought it would be of particular interest for Misery Loves Company because it concerns an editorial that caused a lot of argle-bargle on our corner of Twitter last week. So I'll just drop the link in the chat here. And then I will begin. Twice in the course of The Beach Bum, Matthew McConaughey's greasy itinerant poet drunk, known only as Moondog, recites his piece, The Beautiful Poem, once at the beginning to the weeknight crowd at a beachside dive bar, and once near the end at his Pulitzer Prize acceptance speech. I go to bed in Havana thinking about you. Pissing a few moments ago, I look down at my penis affectionately. Knowing that it has been inside you twice today makes me feel beautiful. This is the only original work of Moondog's we're exposed to in the whole movie, and it's not his. The Beautiful Poem was written by Richard Brautigan in 1968, with only Havana subbed in for Los Angeles. Elsewhere in the movie, he admits to plagiarizing a D.H. Lawrence poem to win a writing contest in high school, but the movie gives us no hint that this particular poem is stolen, and no one shows the slightest sign of suspicion about the beautiful poem, least of all the attendees at the big gala for Moondog's Pulitzer Prize for Literature, the very people you'd expect to catch a thing like that. This little factoid may seem a bit inconsequential, the type of thing you might read in a Screen Rant type like clickbait listicle, but I would argue that it completely changes the tone of the movie. The Beach Bum met with mixed reviews on its release because critics had trouble deciphering how exactly we ought to feel about Moondog. Is he a wounded soul muddling about in the world as best he can? A figure of bumbling fun? A fundamentally selfish taker? The knowledge that this poem, the audience's only window into Moondog's lauded literary talent, is actually not his, provides a handy skeleton key. It makes things clear how we're supposed to view Moondog. It also tells us that the Beach Bum isn't really about Moondog at all. What's it about then? To answer that, I'd like to dip into the dreaded discourse for a minute. Apologies. A lot of feathers were ruffled recently by an essay published in T, the New York Times Style magazine, under the title, "Where Have All the Artist Addicts Gone?" I didn't find the essay quite as tasteless as the title promised at first glance, but it's still no one's idea of a good bit of writing. It seemed to me to be a dryly historical, padded out afterthought to a title optimized to generate maximal hate clicks. The bulk of the essay is just a collection of anecdotes about writers who earn their place in literary history, either in spite of or because of personal demons that they self-medicated with drugs and alcohol, beginning with Poe, continuing through Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Cheever, Burroughs, all the usual suspects. Then the article segues into the not particularly astute observation that that sort of thing doesn't seem so glamorous nowadays. It may even be frowned upon for a writer to behave like that. To the extent that the essay even has a thesis or any kind of claim to make, it's that the compulsion for everything to be civil and inoffensive is now reflected in our curious relationship to drugs and alcohol. Our culture now is one in which artists are less troubled geniuses than they are public figures, generally expected to respond uncontroversially on their various platforms to whatever the news cycle may bring. There are a lot of ways this piece fails. The writer, M.H. Miller, puts forth a question right there in the title and then treats it more as a rhetorical exercise than something that can be seriously investigated and answered. He doesn't seriously question whether writers, great or otherwise, are really more prone to addiction or mental illness than others. The closest he comes is citing a laughably underrepresentative survey of 1 year's worth of candidates at the Iowa Writers Workshop. He doesn't ask whether the experience of the great celebrated artist addicts are representative of addict artists as a whole. He doesn't bother to note that the emergence of the artist addict archetype didn't come about until the industrial capitalism and the corresponding rise of the creative person as both an economic and a social category. This is intensely frustrating, because if he had taken the time to find out where this archetype came from, it would quickly become clear where it's going. He doesn't see fit to talk about the professionalization of the arts, the vast decline in pay for the average working writer, the near impossibility for a writer to support oneself by their work alone without some sort of day job, usually in academia or publishing, affording little room for drinking binges, scandals, and professional bridge burning. The opioid epidemic gets a scant few throwaway lines, when surely it is relevant to this conversation that legitimate doctors are now writing grandmothers prescriptions for smack 10 times stronger than anything Burroughs ever shot up in his life. Each of these failures to investigate is forgivable, at least individually. There's one, however, that isn't. Why does the artist addict fascinate us so? Why do we speak of their lives in hushed tones, even as we cluck our tongues at the specifics? Mr. Miller does broach the issue briefly near the end, and then skitters away like a spider from the candle. He rounds out the article with an unconvincing anecdote about how he wanted to understand the life of the artist addict so that he could avoid the fate of John Berryman, the famous poet who drank himself off a bridge 50 years ago this year, and that of any number of artist addicts to whom he feels a spiritual kinship. The truth, I believe, you can intuit from watching The Beach Bum. When we meet Moondog, he's on an extended debauch in the Florida Keys, living on a houseboat, drinking and toking at all hours, living the life of a celebrated local eccentric, adored by a sun-soaked public that generally considers him over the hill artistically, but a fun guy to hang out with nonetheless. He does nothing, womanizes freely, and leaves spilled drinks and the occasional pool of blood from a drunken mishap for his long-suffering housekeeper to clean up. Moondog is pulled out of Margaritaville by his lovingly indulgent and obscenely wealthy wife, Minnie, who calls to summon him back to their Miami Beach mansion for their daughter's wedding. Moondog shows up loaded, embarrasses his daughter, insults his new son-in-law mercilessly, and accidentally discovers that Minnie is having an affair with his best friend, R&B singer Lingerie. This is the first consequence of his actions Moondog has ever encountered, and he responds by leaving the wedding and going bar crawling. Minnie tracks him down, and they enjoy a drunken and diverting evening before her violent death in a car wreck. Henceforth comes the second consequence Moondog has ever encountered. His Minnie, being a bit more astute than she initially seemed, has decreed in her will that Moondog will not get any of her money until he gets off his hinder and finishes the great American novel he's been chipping away at for years. After being rebuffed for money by his daughter, he rounds up a gang of homeless fruitcakes to smash up his wife's mansion. He gets sentenced to rehab, breaks out with the help of an inhalant-addicted pyromaniac named Flicker, and embarks on a Shaggy Dog series of comic misadventures. The life of Moondog and the Beach Bum is the ideal form of the artist addict as outlined in Where Have All the Artist Addicts Gone? Everybody seems to love him. Everyone makes endless allowances for him in light of his genius and his easygoing party animal nature. It doesn't seem to be anything he can do to get the people in his life to stop tolerating him. Even while making half-hearted entreaties to get a move on that novel, his agent treats him to free drugs and golf games. Even in the middle of denying him money, his daughter expresses faith that he'll finish his novel, and when her husband gets annoyed at his constant belittlement, she belittles him right back and calls her father a genius. There seems no limit to Moondog's blessings. He stumbles Candide-like through one disaster after another, from which he miraculously escapes unscathed every single time. And when all the adventuring is done, Moondog sits down, having learned a whole lot of not a lot, and somehow finds inspiration to finish his novel, which is an immediate hit that solidifies his literary reputation and wins back the respect of his family and the literary world. It all seems more than a little fantastic, an impression only heightened by the Beach Bum's aesthetic. Sun-splashed tropical landscapes, shimmering ocean views, idyllic bars and beach resorts, neon-drenched night parties. Stylistic choices reinforce this. Scenes regularly slip into one another with a couple of quick flashbacks and flash forwards, with the same conversation confusedly playing out across shots that take place in different locations and times, evoking the fluid temporal logic of the dream, or the hazy time perception of the perpetually drugged out. Moondog himself is a protean Loki-esque figure, often appearing with the Florida sun catching his bottle blonde hair and making it shine like a halo, or at night with harsh neon lighting washing his features into an unrecognizable smear. And McConaughey leans into this inconstancy, pulling his face into 100 unsettling variations of a stoner grin. He treats his own life like a not particularly lucid dream, obeying his every impulse, stealing beers out of coolers, stealing fishing rods just because he feels like fishing, having a series of fortuitous run-ins with people he knows, and jumping into half-baked adventures with them, with the disregard for consequence that only fantasy or sociopathy can provide. Yes, by almost any measure, Moondog is a very bad person, a fact the Beach Bum makes very little effort to hide from us or to justify. And this is another important element of the artist addict mythos. In Where Have All the Artist Addicts Gone? Miller writes, These days, it's incredible to think about the lengths we used to go to in order to forgive artists for being bad people. Ours was once a culture that awarded Norman Mailer, an inconsistent writer, not one but 2 Pulitzer Prizes, and that was after he nearly killed his second wife in a drunken assault. Allen Ginsberg once said of Burroughs that he didn't become a serious writer until after he shot and killed his common law wife, Joan Vollmer, in a drunken attempt at performing a William Tell act. To this, Miller can only baldly respond, these comments haven't aged well. But to Miller's thinking, there's an evil greater than tolerating these crimes, and that would be to let our fear of repeating them turn artists into dull, mediocre nobodies. These days, Miller writes, everything and everybody must be bland and inoffensive, or one runs the risk of that legendary cancellation in the sky, a myth that has overtaken the Hemingway-like figure, the high-functioning addict whose great work was fueled by liquor and drugs. This cancellation boogeyman, that feared specter of the New York Times opinion pages, troubles Moondog not one whit. His venality is precisely cut to fit the contours of the romantic outlaw, his every misdeed falling within the realm of the human and the forgivable. He doesn't beat women, he isn't a sex pest, he doesn't have any problematic political axes to grind. He does womanize, but you can't call him toxically masculine because he cross-dresses. Terrible misfortunes are constantly befalling the people in Moondog's orbit, but he's only abstractly responsible for any of it, with enough distance between him and true culpability that it seems worth a chuckle and not a scold. Sure, Minnie may have been killed while they were out drinking, but she was the one driving, not him. Sure, Flicker may have robbed a man on a motorized cart for beer money, but it wasn't Moondog's idea, and he half-heartedly tried to stop him. Sure, Moondog's friend Captain Whack may have gotten his foot bitten off by sharks while giving what he thought was a dolphin tour, but Moondog tried to warn him about the sharks. Only in the very last scene of the movie does Moondog veer close to a cancelable offense, when he collects Minnie's inheritance and cash on a boat and semi-accidentally blows it up for a crowd of cheering spectators, forgetting that an adorable kitten he'd picked up earlier in the movie is on the boat. The camera lingers on the cat just before the explosion, ensuring that you feel a sick sensation in the back of your throat until the next scene where Moondog has somehow gotten the cat off the boat and breathlessly laughs, "That was a close one, buddy." The only people Moondog directly mistreats are those who are below him on the social ladder. The housekeeper who has to go above her pay grade to patch him up after a drunken fall, the butlers who have to stand awkwardly by while he goes down on his wife in a beach chair, the short order cooks who can't do their jobs because he's having sex with a beach floozy by the grill. Despite his man of the people pretensions, Moondog really likes to do things like this. At one point, Moondog's agent confesses, "You know what I always loved about being rich? You can be horrible to people. They just have to take it." Moondog laughs in full-throated agreement. So to recap, Moondog lives a life glamorous beyond both his means and his desert, and yet his comeuppance never comes up. He's an addict, but only to booze and weed and coke, not to any hard drugs, which would veer the whole story into depressing territory. He's a bad person, but not in a way that might get his novel removed from any school curriculums later on. He can treat anybody however the hell he feels like. The people who matter love him for it, and the people who don't can't say boo about it. And at the end of the story, having regained his gigantic pile of unearned wealth, he sets fire to it all. Not because he doesn't want it anymore, but because he's realized he doesn't need it. Things are always going to work out for him. In case it's not clear yet, I'm saying that Moondog's whole life and the life of the great artist addict is a fantasy concocted by the educated, domesticated middle-class types who overwhelmingly write, market, and read literary fiction. Everything about him reeks of bourgeois wish fulfillment. His crass manners, his hedonism, his indifference to social convention, his itinerant lifestyle, and above all, his massive financial and critical success without having any formal education or paying any mind to publishing industry politics. Moondog alone can live like it's still the glamorous mid-century, when writers were rock stars and a single Harper's byline paid 3 months' rent. He alone can be as boorish and politically incorrect as he likes without the cancel monster pouncing on him. And he alone can act like being a writer puts you far enough above anybody else to justify treating the service industry employees like furniture. The art of the movie has been described as putting a dream on a screen for others to see. And this particular dream springs from the id of a million frustrated writers who read Papa Hemingway and dream of indulging self-destructive and antisocial impulses under the banner of their art. But the dream of the beach bum is also a lucid one. Moondog's many sins are all expiated by his vaunted literary genius, the only example of which you ever see is the beautiful poem. The knowledge that it was plagiarized breaks the spell the rest of the movie casts. The poem's original author, Richard Brautigan, was a classic artist addict and lived a life very similar to Moondog's in many respects. But unlike Moondog, when his star faded, he committed suicide at 49. This all-excusing genius is a lie. Moondog claims he needs to live the life he does to get the literary juices flowing, but when it's time to produce, he has to resort to thieving. Nor is he a deep enough thinker or a sensitive enough person to have any personal demons he needs to chase away with the boozing and the whoring, as we're told all the great artist addicts do. He lives the life he does because people want him to. Moondog didn't invent the artist addict. Our society, our culture invented the artist addict as a product of middle America's frustrations and anxieties. We romanticized these figures. We enabled their behavior, and we wrung their lives for every drop of vicarious fantasy we could squeeze. When Moondog reads the beautiful poem, the beach bum reveals itself as a savage satire of literary establishment that sustains itself by peddling adolescent hedonism fantasies spun out of real people's painful lives. Moondog sidestepped all that pain by turning himself into a fantasy. He lives the dream and we buy it. He's no genius, just able to exploit his own niche. And in this grubby dog-eat-dog world of ours, no one can blame him for that.
That was fantastic, Tyler. This is like this is a great piece of criticism. What you've done here is you've taken that New York Times editorial, which I hadn't read before, but which I've seen people bitching about for a week, and which, judging by what I've seen and what you wrote, seems like a pretty mediocre piece of like non-writing. And you've taken a film that was pretty critically panned and kind of widely dismissed. And through your criticism, like you've elevated both of them and you found commonality there and you've worked towards like a real fucking insight here. And I think that's what great criticism does, right? It finds something in the art that transcends the discourse, and it finds something in the discourse that transcends the discourse. And you end up with something that makes the reader feel not only like, oh, I want to watch this movie, or oh, this movie was good or bad, or oh, like, oh, this person is like weighing in on the issues of the day, but like weaves all that shit together in a way that's legitimately insightful and maybe gives the reader a little bit of an epiphany that they can carry on when they're creating their own art or living their own fucking lives. And I think you nailed it with this, Tyler. As someone who hasn't watched the movie and hasn't read the op-ed, I think this is fucking fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. And Eris. Eris is up next. Before Eris goes,
Speaking of artist addicts, I'm just kidding. Sorry. What were you saying?
no, Eris, before you go, I just want to see, was there anyone else who wanted to read after?
Oh yeah, please go before me.
Not before you, just after you. I just want to know whether I'm winding up the night after you go or if somebody else wants to read. I don't think I missed anyone. Rudy, did I miss anyone? Rudy unmuted his mic, but I don't hear anything.
Oh, nope, I didn't see anybody, but if anybody
Okay.
wants to go and I missed you, please put it in the chat.
Cool. So yeah, while Eris is going, if you have anything you want to read, just put it in the chat. If not, we'll wind up after Eris is done. Sorry, it's all yours, Eris.
Oh, don't be sorry. After reading that, after hearing that, sorry, I kind of want to read one of my favorite things by Goethe said. Can I do that? It's not that long.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
This is I don't know how to pronounce it. Torquato, Tasso. Torquato. So how do you say it? Please.
On this one, I'm not sure what you're.
Torquato. Oh shit. Torquato Tasso. I'm making him sound like a empanada. Whatever.
You're good.
Tasso alone. Have you awakened from protracted dream, and has the dear delusion suddenly left you? The very day of your consummate joy. Did a sleep cage you to hold in awe your soul with heavy fetters now? There's no denying, you dream awake. Where have those good hours gone that played around your head with flowery garlands? The days when with free longing your mind could soar through the extended azure of the sky. And yet you are alive and touch real flesh, can touch real flesh and doubt that you're alive. Is it my fault? Is it the other's fault that faulted I am here, a guilty man? Have I committed for that for which I suffer? Was not my whole fault that I did what's right? I looked at him, moved only by goodwill, moved on too fast by the heart's folly, hope, that he who wears a human face is human, that he, with open arms I flung myself at him to meet no arm's response, but lock and bolt. And yet so tactically I had planned how to confront a person who from old acquaintance had been suspect to me. Whatever may have happened to you now, hold on, hold fast to this old certainty. I saw her, she was there in front of me. Her glances, tone, her words' most precious meaning, they're mine forever, not to be stolen from me by time, by fate, or by ferocious fortune. And if too quickly then my spirit rose, and if too fast in my own heart I gave air to the flames that now have turned on me, I cannot rue it, even if all my life's predestined course were ended now forever. To her I pledged myself, glad to obey the beckoning hint that drew me to disaster. Let it be so. At least I have proved worthy of the sweet confidence that has forced wide open for me the blackened gates of a long term of mourning. Nothing now can be undone. The sun of warmest favor suddenly goes down for me. The Duke averts his gracious eyes from my person, leaving me to stand bewildered here on the dark, narrow track. Those ugly beasts, ambiguously winged, the nasty retinue of ancient night, swarm from their flares and flap around my head. Where shall I direct my footsteps now to flee this loathsomeness that whirs all around me? Avoid a precipice too, more fearful still? And that's originally by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, translated by Michael Hamburger. And that's one of my favorite things ever. And I read it because I read this book called Poetic Madness and the Romantic Imagination, which was kind of like related to what was previously read. And then, okay, I have a really, really, really short love poem too. I have never had to hide how I felt about anything before. But when you decide you're sort of, kind of, just a little bit in love with a woman who you shouldn't be with, for more reasons than you can count on your fingers and toes, it is necessary to keep quiet. But she makes me want to sing and scream and laugh and cry, none of which are quiet actions. So at night, when the world sleeps, I make all the noise I want and keep quiet in daylight. Yeah. And then also I wanted to know like what text generator you use, because I wanted to like mash up all these breakup emails I have and just make a bot make one. Yeah.
Someone else may be able to answer the text editor thing. I know a lot of people are using like GPT-2 or GPT-3. I'm not sure which one is publicly available right now. But somebody who has actually done that shit can probably answer that in the chat. But I want to talk about your poem because your poem rocks.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece, and it's so unlike your other writing. Now, I love your other writing, and I love this piece, but I really dig it when someone comes here and like shows a side of themselves that's surprising, you know, that's unexpected. And most of your
I wanted to surprise you.
well, you did because most of your writing is like wonderfully inventive, but like pitch fucking black, right? Like really, really dark, really, really like ugly, like in like its portrayal of humanity. So it's really nice to have you come here and like read like really sensitive romantic piece, right? And an optimistic, sensitive romantic piece. It's such a nice change of pace, and it's
For real, right?
and it's remarkably well written, and you killed it with the delivery of both that piece and the piece you read before it. So fantastic, Eris. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Am I pronouncing Goethe wrong? I could be. I don't know how to pronounce anything really.
I think this. I don't know. I can't.
It's probably right.
I mean, I don't think it's Goethe.
Even
With sounds right to me, but Goethe.
I think you're right, Eris.
sounds
I
like
mean,
you're-
wow. Okay, I'm gonna put something in chat, and just if you ever feel bad about your writing, you can just look at that. Oh wait, no, I can't. Well, it's a version of Closer by Nine Inch Nails, but it's about Farmville.
okay.
I'm just going to shut up. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Eris. Thank you, Eris. And I have so much trouble, like not even pronouncing the names of like authors, like old dead dudes, but even authors in our scenes, like in our scene. Like after I heard
Dude, I always think Will like Marian Arathos.
I have no idea how my nobody knows how my last name is pronounced. I don't even
No,
think
not you, Will Ben the not dead, you know.
not yet. But no, like when Gabe said earlier this evening, James Nulick, I had to keep repeating that in my head because I always want to just call him James Nulick, which is really sad. But this is a guy
Wow,
I just
that's amazing.
even people within our own scene, right? Like I don't know how their names are pronounced. So anyway, it was a great piece, Eris, great poem. And hopefully somebody can help you with the AI assisted writing thing in the chat. Anyway, I think that's it for the night. Last call here. If anyone wants to read, going once, going twice. I think we're done. It's 10
Yeah,
o'clock.
I see Daphne wants to read something if there's
Oh,
time.
Daphne. Oh, okay. Oh, yep. Sorry about that, Daphne. I missed you in the chat. It's all yours.
That's okay. I thought I was going to get away with sliding under the radar. But yeah, I have a poem. This is called Sisyphus on Holiday. So I carried you to a strange city, seeking an alien range of mountains, peeking into a plot of sky, wool with clouds, gazing into ocean, a bottle blue tourist trap that could have been the entire sea for all I knew. You were a gull in an egg. I felt your pulse choke and release as if you were my own heart. When things were good and new, you threatened to discover your wings and find flight. I knew that if you did, I could change my mind, slip a thread over your foot and love you like a kite flyer. I just needed to be elsewhere. I needed the sun's ritual of burning to feel remote. I needed it to have a reversal of fortune and begin gathering light like some insatiable cosmic aperture. I needed to see you different again. I got so far out, there was no wind. I wanted us on another moon. I wanted you dusted in its silver like the Tin Man who was painted with mercury that almost killed him but didn't. In low gravity, you were a bindle of sand because I needed you heavy. You needed to feel like something worth buckling under. You were in all of my photos, always smiling at the camera with all of your teeth. When he kissed me in the Museum of Anvils, the cliff slope mellowed. When another kissed me at the center of the Milky Way that crushed us together down its pinhole drain, it felt like you could slip out of your collar and the thin red leash in my fingers without me even noticing, wheeling uphill, barking desire.
Daphne, that was fucking beautiful. The scope of this poem is tremendous. Like the scope and the intimacy, right? Because this is a poem that like takes you through this wonderful, like surrealist, like swath of history and pop culture and symbolism and all of this shit, right? But it remains the whole time so like intimately and perfectly tethered on this one relationship, this one like failing relationship. And it's so good. It's so good, like as a piece of like relationship poetry and as a piece of like existential poetry, right? It's really fucking good. It kills Daphne. Thank you. And I think it's the perfect one to end the night with too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I think that's it, guys. I think that's it. I'm gonna leave. I still have some battery life for once. So I'm gonna leave the Zoom meeting up for a little while here and we can just hang out. We're coming to a relatively early close tonight. But if you're watching this on YouTube, and these will be up on YouTube next week, fingers crossed, pray to God. This has been Misery Loves Company. We do this every fucking Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Anyone is welcome to come and share their poetry, share their writing, share whatever, share their weird art, share their weird audio visual experiment. I don't give a shit. Come and share your shit. We tweet out the link, I don't know, 5 to 15 minutes in advance from our Twitter account at Misery Tourism. That's it. I've been fucking rambling. We're done. Rudy, can you kill the video, please?